Up and Ball. I am Aaron Chow, accompanied by my co-host John Harris as always, and we are here today to share our thoughts and reactions and such to Week 7. It was definitely one, we were just talking about this a few minutes ago, especially for me, but it was a rough week for both of us, but it was a rough week for me, and I know I've had a bunch of rough weeks, but this is I think easily my worst week of the year. And oddly enough, there's only 13 games, so that says a lot. But hey, it's funny to shape ball and to bounce in funny ways. Nonetheless, if I remember correctly, your Cowboys are on bye, so I'm guessing you're chilling this weekend, huh, John?
Yeah, and it was actually perfect timing too because I had a friend's wedding to go to, so it was great. Didn't have to miss the Cowboys play. You know, it was a good time seeing friends. So yeah, I mean, I did get to see some of the games, but you have to fill me in on a lot of these as well.
All right. Well, I'll definitely be able to do so. I will say too before we start, we had a little anytime touchdowns, little, I don't want to call it a little segment. Unfortunately, neither of us went 3 for 3. I went 2 for 3.
No.
I had Kenneth Walker.
Went 1 for 3.
Yeah, yours we were just talking about it too. Yours was a little lucky. Waddle. So John Waddle, who obviously had that back injury for most of that game, so he missed that one. Once again, we'll get to all the games. But then Amari Cooper, we'll talk about the Browns game. But then ETN did hit for you though, and then for me it was only Kenneth Walker that unfortunately did not fall in the end zone. So there's that. But let's get into Week 7. Let's start with the Thursday night game. Obviously, since that's first, was a relatively close one. Came down to the wire, and very unfortunate ending, especially for Foster Moreau, as the Jaguars win 31-24 over the New Orleans Saints. I mentioned that because Foster Moreau had the potential game tying touchdown because obviously he saw the hit the extra point, but nonetheless, had the pass hit his hands. Unfortunately, it was a drop. Sucks. And I will give credit to his teammates. They all backed him up. Hey, one play doesn't define a game. Just unfortunate that was one of them. But nonetheless, what you were able to watch this game, right? So do you have any thoughts on it? Okay.
I mean, I was impressed by both teams, to be honest. When you look at the overall stats, you feel somewhat surprised about why the Saints lost. They had less penalties. They won the turnover battle where Jacksonville lost 2 fumbles. The Saints threw 1 interception, so they won that. They dominated the time of possession. They had way more total plays. They were 4 of 6 on 4th down, all these kind of things. But the thing that I thought really stood out to me was it was although it was 31-24, in situational moments, the defenses both showed up really big, and specifically on 3rd down. The Jags were 2 of 11 on 3rd down. The Saints were 3 of 18. And the Saints, they ran more plays, so naturally they're going to get more 3rd down opportunities, but also it felt like Jacksonville was just a little bit more explosive, was able to get a lot more done on their 1st and 2nd down opportunities. I mean, Travis Etienne was doing really well in this game. It felt like when he touched the ball, he was able to make some plays. Same with, Trevor Lawrence. He was having a solid outing, especially when it came to, people were talking about him coming in with the injury and all that kind of stuff. He looked fine because he actually paced the team in rushing. He had 59 rushing yards. Etienne only had 56. And so he was getting a lot of big, crucial runs where, he's keeping these drives alive. And, he's even doing it on 2nd down, like I said, where the Saints, it kind of felt like their offense just stalled out a lot more, where you could kind of see, I mean, even in the fact that this is now 2 or 3 weeks in a row. I can't remember exactly how many times it's happened where Alvin Kamara is just getting an absurd amount of dump offs. And that's in large part due to the fact that it seems like I don't know what it is, whether it's play calling or the receivers or the chemistry with Derek Carr or just the Jaguars, playing well defensively. But it seemed like the Saints just weren't able to get a ton open downfield, which led to Derek Carr having to do things a lot more underneath, which obviously, once again, results in more 3rd down opportunities that they weren't able to take advantage of. So, yeah, I don't know. Ultimately, it just felt like Jacksonville was a little bit better situationally. And, the Foster Moreau drop happened. It's unfortunate. I don't really know what to say about that one. You got a wide open touchdown in the end zone that you could catch. You drop it. It is what it is.
Yeah. Only thing I want to mention too that you were kind of alluding to is, I think you mentioned a lot of dump offs. There is definitely one criticism is, Derek Carr's kind of gone back to what he was a couple of years ago, where he's just kind of being conservative. And once again, that'll win you a couple of games, but especially in moments in games like these, sometimes you gotta take chances. And I think we've seen too, like Chris Olave, I'm not sure if you own him in any fantasy leagues, but many Chris Olave owners are not very happy. And I think we're seeing that there's a lack of aggression there in regards to, deep plays and things like that. That once again, I feel like it's a little bit on Derek Carr. He's never really been the most aggressive guy. And we saw the Saints the past couple of years, especially last year with Olave. They were able to hit some shots downfield and such. So, and I'm not going to use the shoulder injury that Carr had a couple weeks ago as an excuse. He's been playing for a couple of weeks now, so he should be fine. But yeah, you throw the ball 55 times and you have 33 completions for only 300 yards. So the 33 completions for 300 yards, and once again, that's not including Yak. I probably should have looked up beforehand to see how much Yak was involved. But yeah, relatively conservative day, and especially in the NFL, usually the more aggressive team is going to win. And we saw that with, like you mentioned, with Jacksonville being able to hit a couple of plays, especially Christian Kirk. Even Jacksonville too. Like, this game could have been worse if Jacksonville, doesn't have the weird. I don't know if you remember that weird Christian Kirk fumble, right? Where he was down and then he tried. Credit to him, I guess he did try to get up and make a play. Then unfortunately, kudos to Paulson Adebo for forcing the fumble. And then if I remember correctly too, I think the Jags also muffed a punt as well, which set up a Saints field goal. Right. So yeah, there was a period where they had some struggles. So yeah, Saints had opportunities. It was, like you said, it wasn't just on that Foster Moreau drop. They had opportunities. Also had a missed field goal as well. So we'll have to see how the Saints do going forward. But I think the score is a little bit deceptive in terms of just how I think the Jaguars probably should have blown. It should have been a bigger win, but nonetheless, it is football. You only have so many opportunities. So I don't have much else to add. Good win for the Jaguars, handling business. Starting to kind of find their rhythm and be the team that we expected them to be coming into the season. So.
And I think that was kind of the big takeaway for me too. Is not just this game, but kind of the string of games they've put together. I've been pretty impressed with the way that Jacksonville has kind of found their form after starting, 2-2. Now they're sitting at 5-2, and you feel like they've kind of become a lot more closer to what we envisioned coming into the season.
Yeah. And last point, I just want to say it's usually good teams, very good teams. They win on the road, and right now 3-0 on the road. Now, granted, I'm not sure. I don't think that's counting any of the London stuff too. So, if you can travel and still play your best, it's usually a good indicative sign that you're a good team. So kudos to them handling their business on Thursday night. That's
as long as you're not like, what was it, the Cardinals when they couldn't win at home, but they always won on the road. When there was 1 year under Kingsbury, I'm pretty sure, where they just could not win at home, but on the road they won every game. So as long as you're not that.
Yeah. So you either got to do one or the other. If you're usually you either got to be really great at home, Seattle was in their prime. When they were Legion of Boom, always going at least 7-1 or 8-0, at home. So you got to have place to some sort of advantage. But nonetheless, that's the Thursday game. Jags take care of business. Let's dive into Sunday because there was a lot there, and I guess I'll be the main one steering. But if you have any comments, you can always. I'll still throw it to you. If you have any thoughts?
I got to watch the 12 o'clock games. Okay. So once the afternoon window opened up, that was when I was gone.
Okay. So let's start with your division. Giants beat the Commanders 14-7. It definitely felt like a Commanders-Giants game, especially with that score. But I'll throw it to you. What were your thoughts in regards to your two division rivals duking it out here?
What a gross game this was, man. I really expected, I don't know, the Giants are just weird. They've kind of started to find their form defensively. It seems like, obviously last week against Buffalo, now this week against Washington, I'm not going to say that Washington's offense are some world beaters, but they've put up some big points against some good teams in that Philadelphia game. So, I still think it was an impressive game defensively from the Giants. And I think it's also nice on their end to have Saquon back because it gave them a focal point that they could build their offense around. Now, he wasn't incredibly efficient in terms of running, but like they gave him 21 carries, and that's what they want to do. Like without him, I just really feel like, and this is not necessarily a thing on Dayball, it's just with the lack of weapons that they have outside of Saquon, like they just don't really know what to do, you know? And so because they don't have anybody that they can just consistently rely on that they know is going to be able to make some plays, you know, if you give them enough opportunities. And so I think that really helped, although the offensive performance, like I said, wasn't like groundbreaking. I mean, you scored 14 points. It was enough to get them the win. And without Saquon, there's a very likely chance that it would not have been enough. Like maybe they turn the ball over a couple times because they got to throw it a lot more, or another running back's in there getting a lot more carries and they're not as efficient. So Daniel Jones takes a little bit more risks. Like there's just a lot of things that I think Saquon kind of brings stability to in this offense, even if the offensive production isn't like, you know, crazy different. I think that he just is a difference maker. So it was good to have him back. And I think that him being there too also kind of opened up the field where we saw Jalen Hyatt was able to have some big plays because teams were committing a lot more to the box to stop Saquon. Darren Waller had a big impact. And yeah, so I mean, like I said, it was a gross game because quite frankly, neither of these teams are good, but I liked what I saw out of New York, at least in this kind of game, because although I don't expect them to make a playoff run, if you want to at least keep the dream alive, you got to start somewhere. And who knows, maybe this could be, you know, the springboard for him. And also shout out to Tyrod Taylor. Although Washington's defense isn't very good, I thought he played really well. So, yeah.
Yeah. Agreed in regards to Tyrod. I always forget too. He's had such like an unfortunate kind of road.
Yeah.
Remember, he was supposed to be the guy. If I remember, my timeline might be off, but remember in Cleveland, and then he got hurt, and then Baker kind of took the job, and obviously he was the first round rookie, so they had to, once he was, you know, he took a job and ran with it basically. Same thing in the Chargers with the weird needle thing that happened to him.
Punctured the lung right before week one, and then it's like right. And then Herbert came in and he killed it. So it's like you can't bench him now. Like I think he threw like 3 touchdowns or something.
So it's like, well, great. Well, now and then so now Tyrod lands here. He's doing pretty well. Once again, I don't think there's a quarterback. I know there's already like, is there a quarterback controversy in New York? I mean, we talked about this before. They're paying Daniel Jones all that money. You kind of have to commit to him once he's healthy. It's great, but it is great. That's why backups are valuable. You see, you know, Tyrod, he's one of the better backups in the league because, as you mentioned, filled in nicely. And yeah, especially once you get Saquon, you know, back, even with, like you said, it wasn't the most efficient day, but stats don't always show, you know, some of those runs where that he makes, you know, gets the extra 1 or 2 yards that, no offense to Matt Breida, that Matt Breida wouldn't get, as we've seen, you know, when Saquon was out. And then, open up a little more offense, especially for Hyatt, like you mentioned, and Darren Waller. Darren Waller had obviously a pretty good game too, probably his best game as a Giant. So good to see there. And then for Washington, like, I don't know, it's just so much talent on offense too. And I know it doesn't help that they're taking a lot of sacks, and it seems like, you know, Sam Howell went from starting off really well and it's not going great. And you can maybe credit that to the sacks, you know, the amount of sacks he's taken and such. But it's Washington's just like you say it perfectly. It's just a kind of a gross game, and these two teams are just hard to get a good feel for right now, or in general, because they're both kind of been trending up and down, or especially like opposite ways though, kind of the whole year. So I don't know what the fix is for Washington. Neither of these teams will probably be in the playoffs, so we'll just move on. But obviously, good win for the Giants, as you mentioned, building a little bit of momentum in recent weeks.
Yeah, I did want to ask you too. Did you see the Jonathan Allen clip?
I feel for Jonathan. I mean, granted, like, you know, it's tough going from Alabama, probably where you were winning a lot, you know, first, and then now you go to, and gosh, he probably knows more than we do about all the dysfunction behind the scenes, and you finally get over that, and you still can't get over the hump. I feel for. I understand it completely.
And I mean, you got to think about it too, like, you know, like Washington played a great game defensively here, and it wasn't enough. You know, like they held the Giants to 14 points. They got a turnover. Did they get a turnover? I can't remember.
They forced a couple of fumbles.
Yeah, so like them. I mean, if there's like, obviously there's always room for improvement in some of these kind of games. Like, it's not like the defense is blameless. Like, sure, maybe they could prevent a touchdown or something, but when you hold the other team to 14 points and you still lose, that's got to be a tough one to swallow. which I think maybe was kind of what led to the frustration. It's been building over the years, but then you have a performance like this, and it's like, man, like, how the heck are we scoring 30 against the Eagles, but we can't even get more than a touchdown against the Giants, you know?
Yeah, well, it's the NFL, it's, matchup league. So, but yeah, no, sorry. Before I do move on, yeah, you did mention Giants defense looking better and better too.
Yeah.
I think Deontay Banks been playing really well recently, and obviously we know, those guys on the inside, Dexter Lawrence and what am I thinking? Leonard Williams. Sorry, I almost forgot. Yeah. They've been playing really well. And also, once again, we mentioned the Jags. Giants could have won this game by more, too, because I think there was a Kayvon Thibodeau where literally got the ball dropped right in his lap, and he dropped it. Could have been an interception. So, yeah. Giants defense seeming to be trending in the right direction as their offense finds their way. And who the heck knows the Commanders. So, we'll see what happens for them. But nonetheless, good win for the Giants as they get their second win of the year, right? Yeah. 2-5.
Also, I do want to say I feel a little bit bad for Sam Howell because I didn't realize this until this week that he is the most sacked quarterback in the league right now. And you go look at the defensive stats. I mean, Dexter Lawrence 2 sacks, Leonard Williams got a sack, Kayvon Thibodeau got 1.5. It's just rough.
He's still kind of very close to that David Carr pace of getting sacked.
Yeah.
And you can definitely argue this. Once again, this Washington team has a lot of talent, too. I know, not regards offensive line, but still some good pieces. But skill position-wise, too, they have a lot of really good talent. So we'll see if they can figure that out. But let's go over to another gross game. Staying on that gross topic, we're going to Tampa Bay, where the Bucs fell to the Atlanta Falcons 16-13. I mean, this game was also ugly in regards to turnovers and such. Not to mention, the whole Bijan Robinson had a headache. And once again, not discrediting his headache, but there's mostly people upset at Arthur Smith and the Falcons staff for kind of withholding that information. Nonetheless, Falcon basically, and get their first road win, 16-13 over the Buccaneers. What were your thoughts in regards to this one?
Yeah, I mean, good win, I guess, for the Falcons, man. But what? I don't want to make this about fantasy football every time I talk about the Atlanta Falcons, but even the NFL, they're investigating now because it's a thing. When someone is dealing with illness or an injury, you're supposed to report it. And so how the heck are we just allowing Bijan Robinson to apparently come into this game ill, and then you're going to say that he wasn't feeling very good and that's why he didn't really play? But then at the very end of the game, you give him some meaningless 3-yard carry? What is that? Yeah. What is that? I genuinely I cannot wrap my head around that at all. He was even out there as a decoy and run blocking it, or not run block, pass blocking at times. He played a couple snaps, I think, in the first half, unless I was looking at the wrong person or something, but I'm pretty sure he was out there from what I remember. And it wasn't long, but it was just a little bit. And I'm just what? If he's not feeling well and he can't go, then what is he getting a 3-yard carry for? I don't get it. I really do not get it. I've ranted to you in the group chat already, but how the Pitts and London thing, you can put some of the blame on the quarterback and all these kind of things, and now I know it's only one game, but you're mishandling a running back that you took in the top 10. This is honestly just getting frustrating. Congrats, Falcons. You're 4-3. You're top of the division. You're winning games. But there's just no way that this mentality of not progressing our young stars and trying to include them and figure out ways to get them the ball is ever going to lead to long-term success or playoff success. There is just no way. If they have to go to the playoffs and play against San Francisco's defense or Dallas's defense or Philly's defense, there's just no way that that's going to lead to sustained success, specifically San Francisco and Philadelphia, because if there's any way you're going to beat those teams, it's going to be through the air. The strengths of those defenses is to stop the run. And that's what you want to do. So if you haven't already figured out how to get Drake London and Kyle Pitts involved in the offense by the time that comes, there's no way you're going to figure it out in that game. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm very much off the Arthur Smith train. Even the fact, besides the fact that they're winning, because the fact that you're using top 10 draft picks on these guys, and they're basically having almost no impact on your team. Like, what are we doing? Like, that's criminal. Like, these are supposed to be the guys that are your foundational building blocks. And I brought up this point to you. One of the reasons that I think it's so ridiculous is, how do you expect Kyle Pitts or Drake London to want to sign a contract extension with you? You didn't use them at all, and you're probably going to offer them less money because their production was lower, when in reality, if they were on a different team, they're probably putting up numbers, because we've seen in spurts, when you actually decide to throw the ball because you're coming from behind, they can make plays. So I don't know. It seems like a really like a fast track way to have those guys just leave whenever they're up for a contract extension, because why the heck would they want to stay with a team who doesn't use them and is not going to want to pay them the way that their talent deserves to be paid? I don't know. It's, well, like I said, they won the game. Congrats on winning the game, but it's just somewhat ridiculous that it's now extended even to Bijan. I'm hoping it's a 1 week thing.
Yeah,
I'm hoping it is.
I would assume so too. And also, I think your point has a lot of valid concerns, even just generally, because NFL's getting, they're involved with gambling and such, and that's a huge factor too. People betting, the Bijan Robinson lines, not knowing that he was going to be extremely limited this game, not having an inkling, on top of just not of the fantasy stuff. As well, because there's also daily fantasy involved too. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the NFL does if they do sort of. I imagine it's maybe some sort of light fine, but hey, we're gonna really punish you if you do it again, type deal. That's what I imagine. I don't know. I'm not in the front office. I have no clue. But we'll see what happens there. But yeah, in regards to this game, I mean, it's what, like you said, it's ugly. Despite both teams really almost fumbling this game away to each other, there's a lot of ugly turnovers. I mean, it is what we thought it was. Credit to Falcons defense, and they've been doing a great job this year of keeping them in these games where they have to manage Desmond Ridder in this offense, because this was another game where they kind of have managed Desmond Ridder in regards to, especially in the passing game, like you kind of already alluded to, because I think up until late in the game, Kyle Pitts only had like 2 receptions for 8 yards. And one of those receptions, was all over social media where like it was a poor pass. And like, I'm sure you saw it was like the 8-yard pass where like he had to like reach behind him. So once again, like,
that was a crazy catch.
And and at least I will say, at least they're using Ridder in the run game too. Like, at least they're just saying, screw it. Let's at least, he may not be able to pass that well. Let's also get involved in the run game, use all of his abilities while we have him out there, because I remember at the beginning of the year, we're kind of like, at least run him, because what's the difference between him? Heineke's a better passer. You might as well go with him. So, yeah, I'm with you, though. A lot of talent, even on the offensive line. Great, really good run blocking offensive line and such. Really good defense. And it'd be interesting to see what happens down the line, and how their year ends. It'd be something to keep a note on. Like, do they if they can, do they have enough on the resume that they'll want to continue with Desmond Ridder? We'll see. But and we'll see for Baker Mayfield, because he had a unfortunately unfortunate late interception that kind of cost them the game when the Bucs are driving late to take the lead. So we'll move on from that one. That was, like I said, that unfortunately that was the biggest news, was the whole Arthur Smith deal there. So let's go on to what wasn't a close. It was supposed to be a good game of all the games on the noon, but it wasn't, as the Ravens took care of business against the Lions 38-6, and then it was right from the get-go. It was 28 unanswered points, I think 35 unanswered too, but 28-0 in the first half. Detroit definitely looking lesser than they have in weeks past, while Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, finally fully healthy, put on quite the performance. What were your thoughts in regards to the Ravens dominating the Lions?
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of my worry about Detroit, is they hadn't really faced a team that had the combo of an elite quarterback and a really good defense at the same time. Like, and, a lot of people were starting to put them up. Like, I had seen some lists of people in their power rankings putting them as like a top 3 team and all these kind of things. And I'm not saying that Detroit is a bad football team by any means, but I think this was somewhat of a reality check that you're not going to play Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, and Geno Smith every week, like at some point. And I will say Detroit's schedule the rest of the way I don't think is very difficult, but at some point you're like in the playoffs, you're going to have to go against Jalen Hurts. You're going to have to go against I mean, just the Niners as a whole. You're gonna have to God forbid they were able to make it to a Super Bowl. You're going out, then you're gonna go play against Mahomes or Josh Allen or Burrow or Lamar again, or Herbert, or all the, like, whoever comes out of the AFC, like the Dolphins and all these kind of teams. Like there's a lot of teams that can do what Baltimore just did. And I'm not counting Detroit out, because I do think that maybe this was just a bad game on both sides of the ball as a whole. And it just kind of got away from them. And like I said, Baltimore I think they're a little bit underrated this year, man. They're looking really strong. Lamar is playing fantastically. The defense, like I said, has been really, really good. They're one of the top scoring defenses. Like they've been looking really strong so far. And we even saw that, like, once they got Roquan Smith last year, everything kind of just fell into place for them. So, and we're seeing some of the younger guys become more, of a factor for them too. So I don't know. I just feel like, this was kind of a wake-up call for a lot of people of how good Baltimore is right now, but also maybe a little bit of a wake-up call for Detroit that, hey, like, let's not count our eggs where they hatched. Like, let's maybe tone it down a little bit. Let's not start declaring them, a team that might be making a Super Bowl run, and let's at least see them have to go through some adversity first, because let's not forget that Detroit's only like 2 years being removed from being a miserable franchise for quite a long time. And although I do like what I'm seeing out of Dan Campbell and what they're building over there, just remember they're still building. That's kind of the key that I want to put here. Don't put all these expectations on them before they're truly there, because then you might get pretty disappointed if they don't necessarily meet up to them. So, like I said, I'm not counting Detroit out yet by any means, because we've seen really good teams have games like this before. But yeah, this, like I said, kind of a wake up call, I think.
Yeah, you mentioned the fact that Baltimore being balanced on both sides of the ball, but I think also on offense too. We mentioned going into the year, Detroit's defense was a main concern, and I think you mentioned they haven't really faced a lot of, I would say, elite level offenses or balanced offenses, and we kind of saw, okay, they got a taste of that this week in regards to Baltimore, which credit to them, because like you said, I think being healthy too this week helped the Ravens. Having Ronnie Stanley and Rashad Bateman coming back too, just another guy in the wide receiver room that they can rely on. Started seeing, and also I think it's important to remember too that Lamar, I don't think he played at all in the preseason too. So new system, we've seen it. It's taken a couple weeks on top of all the injuries. And now I won't be shocked if we start seeing them roll a little bit. But yeah, I mean, got the run game going too, and that led to Gus Edwards had an 80-yard reception. Gus Edwards isn't like a receiving back or a scat back.
No.
So, and that was off a play action, a very good like RPO play action. Same with Mark Andrews' touchdown. So, yeah, great to see Baltimore have a dynamic offense. Hopefully Monken and the gang can keep building on that, because we've seen before where they start off the first half of the year hot, and then teams figure it out, and then they never keep progressing their offense and building off that. But I liked what I saw from there. And then on the flip side for the Detroit, like, this is just, I think I'm with you. Like, it's just one of those games where a little bit of reality check in regards to, hey, they're a young team. Like you said, they're still a lot of, most of these guys in this team still figuring out how to be consistent week in and week out. And don't forget, like, especially like Jameson Williams, he's a very key piece to what they, to their future. If he can be that outside deep threat, and he hasn't had, last preseason out with an ACL, this preseason obviously missed, I forget anything, hamstring issue, and then obviously he was suspended for a time. So he's still getting back in the fold. And as we saw this game, wasn't really a factor, but hopefully he can be one, because Amon-Ra St. Brown's really good, but anyone that, especially fantasy people, they love him because PPR guy, but he's mostly a slot guy. He's not going to be doing damage deep, and kind of same with Sam Laporta. So, yeah,
I will say on the James Williams things too, I do think it was encouraging that they're showing an increasing sign of trying to get him involved, because I think he had 6 targets or something. Yes. I mean, like you said, it didn't result in anything, but I mean, they as a whole, outside of Amon-Ra and Jahmyr Gibbs with some stuff going on, they really didn't move the ball that well. So, but I don't know. Like I said, they're still building, and I really think there's another gear that Detroit could maybe hit. I don't know if it's this year, but there's still a lot of potential on this team.
Yeah, they got good meat and potatoes for a team, as we mentioned. They have a really good O-line, or damn good O-line, definitely top 5-ish, top 3 if you want to put them there. And then big defensive line. You know, Aiden Hutchinson's good. They just got to fill out the rest, the skill position guys on both sides of the ball. You know, getting developing or just getting guys via free agency. So we'll see how they can improve going forward. Oh, and last thing too, because I sent this to you before this, like earlier the last week, and it's ironic that happened. I'm not a Detroit hater. I really like what they're doing, but I was really upset and that the NFL put out that little like Instagram post, or probably put it on all the socials, like, is Jared Goff a top 5 quarterback? Like, come on. Like, anyway. So hopefully this.
I will say that we haven't talked about him yet, but there's been a couple of quarterbacks that about 2 weeks ago everybody was calling MVP candidates, and they're all this stuff. They're top 5, top 10 QBs, and now they've come back to earth. And and just interesting.
It's I think I'm not sure if this happened last year. Maybe I'm just putting more socially aware, and we'll keep talking about some of it because like it's getting really annoying living this kind of hyperbolic, knee-jerk reaction type.
It definitely happened last year. I remember Tua to start the year, like the first 6 games, everybody's like, he's the MVP. And then he had that stretch of 4 games where they lost like all 4 and like the week 9 range is when it kind of started. I don't remember exactly when. And he had a couple picks that were kind of bad, and then the Packers gave me through 3 and all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden everybody's like, he's the worst quarterback in the world. And it's like, gosh, yeah.
I'm saying, because I also, the Jared Goff hype's been building up. People were saying, I think, because last year people were like, oh man, the Lions won that trade because Stafford happened to be injured last year. They just won the Super Bowl, so like the Rams kind of won that one. Anyway, and there's a couple other notable quarterbacks that people are already starting to. The haters are coming out. That's what I'm saying. I feel like, or because like I've already seen it, and we'll talk about them later. But nonetheless, Ravens take care of business, like you mentioned. Kind of flying on the radar, no pun intended, because of Ravens, but they're looking damn good, and we'll see if they can keep building and getting momentum. Like I said, Lions, I think it's just a bump in the road in the long run, especially since I think we went over last week. Their schedule is relatively weak per se. So, but yeah, there is that.
I wanted to say too, because I've heard this statement, and I feel like it really applies to them too. I feel like it's one of those games too where it's like, I've heard people talk about like the measuring stick game, where like, their schedule's kind of easy the rest of the way, but this game kind of shows you how you really stack up against some of these top teams, and you got a lot of time to fix that. So we'll see down the road, can they fix that when they go to if they got to go to Philadelphia, do they change things, right? Have they learned from this game specifically? So we'll see.
And I will say Dan Campbell did say all the right things. I really liked afterwards. Like, hey, like, we got, we'll learn from this, yada, yada. So, I mean, great guy with words. We'll see, if they can put that into action going forward. But speaking of quarterbacks under scrutiny, let's go to this next one, because both these quarterbacks, especially after this game, one definitely is under scrutiny, but it was the New England Patriots. Mac Jones probably has his best game of the year statistically, as the Patriots get the late win at home over the Buffalo Bills, pulling off the upset 29-25. This is definitely a shocker here. But what were your thoughts in regards to the Patriots getting the win here?
It was definitely surprising. And I know, like a lot of people are instantly going to blame Josh Allen and all that kind of stuff. And, once again, it feels kind of similar to like Justin Herbert versus Dallas. Now, that one's a little more excusable because Dallas is a far better team than New England. But there's room for improvement. But man, it feels like when we're pointing all the fingers at Josh Allen, we're kind of ignoring some of the other things that happened in this game. Notably, like, I don't know, the fact that the defense allowed 29 points to a Patriots team that offensively has been absolutely miserable.
What, they had like 3 points combined in the 2 games prior against like the Saints, and I forgot the other team they got blown out by. But
literally, they played the Raiders last week, and they scored 17. And it's like the Raiders are not good defensively. So like scoring 17 is kind of disappointing against that team. Then they played the Saints and they scored 0. They played Dallas, they scored 3. They played the Jets, they scored 15, and that was a win. They scored the Dolphins, they scored 17. Literally, I mean, they have won before this game. The only game that they scored more than 17 points was that Eagles game. to start the season. Week 1, it was 25-20. And that was week 1. Then after that, once again, 17, 15, 3-0, 17. Their highest scoring game of the season. They put up 29 against Buffalo, and everybody's all of a sudden pointing their fingers at Josh Allen. And once again, Josh Allen, he could have been better. He threw an interception. Obviously, when with the quarterback, you could always demand excellence. Like, you could ask for perfection. You could ask for him to go 41-41 and complete every single pass. It's not realistic, but like I said, there's always room for improvement. But when you allow Mac Jones to dice you up for 272 yards. He went 25 of 30. He threw 2 touchdowns. And I'm criticizing this defense because I did this week 1 again when Philadelphia happened. He threw 3 touchdowns against the Eagles. He had 300 yards against them, and I said that's disappointing from the Eagles defense. And they only allowed 20. This defense allowed 29. And for the record, I know that Matt Milano's hurt, Tre'Davious White's hurt. I know they're dealing with a lot of injuries, so I'm factoring that in, but it's kind of worrisome for Buffalo is that the defense doesn't feel like something they can maybe fully rely on. And, Dawson Knox gets hurt in this game, so they got to go more to Kincaid. And, who knows? He might become more of a playmaker because he showed up in this game pretty big time. But I don't know. I just feel like Buffalo, they have not looked good the last few weeks, and maybe it's an identity thing, or I'm not entirely sure. But I just don't think it's quite fair to necessarily point all the fingers at Josh Allen, especially in this game, because if you're doing that, you have not watched the Patriots all year, because quite frankly, allowing 29 to the Patriots is straight up embarrassing.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Mac Jones being incredibly efficient, like 25 or 30.
25 or 30
only sacked
is insane.
once, like 2. That's a big thing. And yeah, Patriots did whatever they wanted almost too. And so I'm with you. Like, listen, I know injuries suck, but they're part of the NFL, and the Bills still have solid pieces. I mean, they still have that, pretty good front four, at least that they invest a lot in. You would think that they would produce more. They didn't do it this game, and then Doug, I always do Sean McDermott, defensive head coach. That's what you hang your hat on. It's still very disappointing. I know injuries suck, but that's why next man up and such. So, yeah, obviously, I think a good portion of blame goes to them. And yes, some of it goes to Josh Allen, like you mentioned, had the turnover. But like we've said before, who outside this offense besides Stephon Diggs scares you? And it's Bill Belichick. I know people are already saying let's fire him and such. He's still a really good defensive mind, and it's not rocket science. And obviously this game, Patriots defense, their goal was let's take away Stephon Diggs and let's contain Josh Allen too, because Josh Allen didn't really get to he ran 7 times, but he didn't. Usually he has about 20-30 yards. It was only 17 yards. They for the most part contained him in this scramble game too. So, and then like you said before, who scares you? No one else scares you. I saw also another thing where they included Gabe Davis in one of the disappointments of the week for fantasy. I'm like this is Gabe Davis. I'm sorry, but he's always kind of, we've been telling us, he's like a wide receiver 3 at best. They still need another weapon. The run game is not proficient, or they're not even patient with it enough. James Cook's been solid, but we feel like we still haven't seen him be fully featured. And I think it's fair to criticize their offensive coordinator too, because I feel like they could just at least be a hair more creative in certain aspects in regards to motioning and getting a Stephon Diggs open, if that's who you're going to feature in your offense, finding easier ways than just having Josh Allen just throw the perfect ball, or have Stephon Diggs just make the damnedest catch you've seen. So, yeah, Buffalo's got some issues, and it's one of the reasons why we were. I forget. Well, I was at least down on them going into the year, was because we always ask going into every offseason, did you get better than last year? Because if you're not getting better, you're worse. And I think right now we're kind of seeing Buffalo's in that kind of in the middle area where they haven't really gotten much better from last year. So we'll see. Be interested to see if things don't turn around. Do they think about does McDermott feel the hot seat or not? I don't think they will, because it seems like Bills fans are really happy with him since they haven't had a good coaching tenure in a long time. But yeah, we'll see what happens. And if I always forget why am I forgetting their OC's name? But if he can. Why am I blanking on it? Nonetheless, it's on the tip of my tongue. It's a very common football name. I'm blanking on it. I'm gonna look it up right now.
Ken Dorsey.
Ken Dorsey, thank you. It's a Dorsey because there's another Dorsey in Kansas City. Yeah, Ken Dorsey. Like we've seen, this offense is not the same as it was with Brian Daboll. Obviously, it's not operating with the same efficiency and dangerousness too that Daboll was able to dial up. So disappointing result for the Bills and obviously the Patriots. Bill Belichick gets win number 300. Not that he probably cares or even knew, or maybe he knew, but he probably definitely didn't care. As we all know, Bill Belichick. He's that type of guy. So let's go to another surprise. And it wasn't a surprise upset. It was just a surprisingly close game. And that is, and unfortunately, too, for our bets, especially for me, this was one I didn't cash through. The Browns escaping the Indianapolis Colts 39-38. Myles Garrett dominated. Unfortunately, the Browns did lose Deshaun Watson in this game, although he was clear to come back. It was PJ Walker that filled in. And Browns get the win here. Colts really gutty performance, couldn't pull through at the end. Obviously, a couple of turnover or penalties that were controversial, to say the least, at the end. So, what were your thoughts though in regard to the Browns getting the win over the Colts?
Well, apparently Deshaun Watson. So, although he was cleared for
the
concussion protocol because he hit his head pretty hard on. I can't remember if it was. I think it was the second interception that got ruled incomplete. But so what happened is apparently he has a strain of the, I'm not even going to attempt to say the word because it's a big, medical term that I don't know how to say, within the rotator cuff. He's got a strain of something within his rotator cuff and he's having pain and weakness. Apparently this is an injury that's pretty common in baseball that causes pitchers to miss 4 to 6 weeks. So I don't know. It seems like maybe he just shouldn't be out there playing at all, and it kind of sucks for me in fantasy because I started him, and if I couldn't have, I probably would have picked up Tyrod Taylor, who would have won me my game. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. It seems like they should just be resting him because they found ways to win. I mean, we saw against the Niners with PJ Walker, the defense stepped up, and we saw in this game offensively, they were able to step up. Jerome Ford, it also sucks they kind of lost him. I think he's going to miss 1 to 2 games. I can't remember exactly how long they said he's out, but it doesn't seem long because he was able to have a solid game. He opened it up with that crazy 70-yard touchdown run. Then Kareem Hunt was able to have a solid performance. We saw, Elijah Moore kind of have a little bit of a bounce back game here. So I don't know. They're finding ways to win in various methods. The defense, although they allowed 38 points. Like they still kind of showed up. They got an interception. They were able to cause some turnovers and, give their offense the ball and some good opportunities. So, yeah, they also recovered 3 fumbles. I didn't even realize they had that many fumbles. That's a lot. So, yeah, good win for Cleveland. Like I said, they're finding ways to win. And when you have a backup quarterback who I guess theoretically could be their third stringer, he's the backup because DTR was like a 1-game thing because he's a rookie. And when they realized it wasn't good, they made the swap. But when you got a backup in, man, you're just trying to unless they ever like that backup eventually establishes themselves, like we've seen on different teams. Like technically with Herbert when he was a rookie, he was the backup to Tyrod. But then like it becomes clear like he's established. Or with Brock Purdy last year, it becomes clear like he's kind of the guy where like they're either good enough, they're as good or better than the starter essentially. Unless that happens. And I don't think it's really happening here. But unless that happens, all that really matters is just trying to find a way to win because having to deal with a backup, it's tough. And if they can just stay, they're 4-2 right now. And I don't know how many weeks Deshaun's going to have to miss because of this, but if they can just kind of stay alive like they currently are, then their playoff dreams, they still got a chance. So for Indianapolis, this is a pretty heartbreaking loss. I saw a stat that when every game Gardner Minshew has ever thrown over 300 yards, he has never won a game. Damn. It's kind of sad because that just means that his defense is probably letting him down.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And I will say too, like also you mentioned all the Browns too stepping up. Myles Garrett. It's a good thing I didn't leave him off the top 5 because he is dominating this year. I think we're still, despite the fact that they let up 38 points. You could arguably say he was the reason they won the game because he caused a good amount of sacks. And then he also blocked one of those field goals. I'm sure you saw it too, where that's literally 3 points he took off the board. That was the difference at the end of the day. So, and you mentioned the Gardner Minshew fact. That's unfortunate because he had a really good game. I think we see too, like a reason why the Colts hung around, why they've kind of been competitive too, is the Shane Steichen. I always mix up the Eagles defensive coordinator, but Shane Steichen, very good offensive mind. I think we're seeing that despite losing their first round dynamic quarterback. I know they've gotten Jonathan Taylor back in the last couple of weeks, but they've still found ways to produce on offense. Josh Downs had a really good game. Same with Michael Pierce. He did kind of have a broken play, but nonetheless, made a play there. Like Indianapolis still finding ways to move the ball, building that identity on offense. And when we talk, it's kind of like the inverse of Derek Carr, because Gardner, you mentioned he had 305 yards passing and only 15 completions. So he was letting the ball go down the field. So it'll be interesting to see, because he'll have a couple more weeks or probably maybe even the rest of the year to be the starter, since Anthony Richardson may miss the rest of the year due to that shoulder injury. But crucial win for the Browns. We'll see what the status is with Sean Watson down the line, but nonetheless, they survive in advance, and that's all you need to do. They go to 4-2. Indianapolis falls to 3-4, falling under 500. So let's go over to. I'm trying to also factor in if this was a late game. But
which game?
I'm going. It is so it was the Bears game that we're going to next, where the Bears won.
That was still, I think,
okay.
Morning. Yeah.
Also, ESPN shuffles it around because of whatever. But nonetheless, okay. So that was the noon game. So John can share his thoughts here. But in a second, so Bears win this one 30-12. Definitely a bigger blowout than we anticipated, especially between these two bottom-ish teams. I don't really mean, but it's kind of matter of the fact. But yeah, Bears win here with Tyson Bagent, their undrafted rookie quarterback, at the helm. What were your thoughts in regards to the Bears win over the Raiders?
Good win. I didn't really pay attention to this one that much because, quite frankly, I just didn't really care. That said, man, I don't know. I'm getting really concerned about the Raiders. Josh Jacobs has been so bad, like in terms of efficiency this year. It's really bad, and I always thought he was kind of inefficient, and so I was very shocked to see what happened last year. And I have not watched enough of the Raiders to really know why he's returned back to that inefficiency, but I can't really ever remember it being this bad. The expectations have changed. After last year, we both had him in our top 5, and he is not looking like that at all. It's pretty miserable. Like I said, I haven't watched enough Raiders to know, is it play calling? Is it the offensive line? Is it Jacobs himself? I don't know. Is it maybe the lack of a Derek Carr quarterback who, can open up the field a little bit more? I'm not sure, but it's been bad. And they've already said they're not willing to trade Devontae Adams at the trade deadline, and he's been talking about getting frustrated and all these kind of things. And I don't know, man. The Raiders are just an absolute mess right now. I'd be kind of surprised at this point if McDaniels was to make it through the season, because this is just it's just gross. It really is just gross. It's kind of what's happening in terms of the Falcons, where your playmakers aren't really actually making that much of a difference. But you're doing it with established veterans who have had a history of success in the past, and you're losing. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, at least with the Raiders, or at least give it Devontae, at least was being target. It's getting the targets. He's getting the looks. Yeah, like you're saying. At least they're trying to get their guys their weapons. It's just unlike Atlanta, it's not leading the wins, unfortunately. And I think that's where I want to go to, because at least Atlanta has good defense. Raiders too. Outside of Max Crosby, like we mentioned before the season, who scares you on the defense? Who's going to make a play on the Raiders defense outside of Max Crosby? And this is one of those games where that was the case. No one really made a play, and the Bears were able to kind of take Max Crosby away. Very patient with the run game, and we're able to manage Bagent, because I'm already seeing. I know these are kind of memes, but people are already jumping on his bandwagon. And hey, he did a really good job. I don't want to take anything away from the guy. And he deserved the win, yada. But once again, he only threw for 162 yards, and that was on 21 completions. So, he managed the game well. Let's not say he won this game for the Bears. He did his job though, and it did help D'Onta Foreman. Once again, I don't understand why D'Onta Foreman's isn't more of a featured back. It seems like everywhere he goes, he has to have injuries ahead of him for him to get his opportunity. Because every time he does get his opportunity, whether it be especially last year in Carolina, and especially this game, he's a solid back, and he can. It's not like he's like he can't be a receiving back, because he showed this game he had in his prior tracker he can be a receiving back. So yeah, because he had a really good game in terms of efficiency as well on the ground and in the air, which helped obviously Bajan in the offense. So yeah, I mean, good win for the Bears, and Panthers still on bye week, so they still technically have the number 1 overall pick along with their own. So not a lot of pressure to tank if they want to. And obviously, I'm sure they'll take their time getting Justin Fields back, as they should be prioritizing his health over W's at this point. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Raiders as we head closer to the trade deadline, and just as the season goes on. If we mentioned some guys in the hot seat, Josh McDaniels could definitely be on that, since they've kind of gone on this rebuild. He's supposed to be an offensive guru, and the offense has been lackluster. Now, granted, quarterback injury and stuff, but you kind of I think we all kind of knew that would be a potential factor, especially when he signed Jimmy Garoppolo, and he already almost had an injury scare to begin with before the season even started. So I don't know. Maybe it's an elaborate plan for the Raiders to tank for their quarterback, although I don't think they are actually intentionally tanking, at least. But nonetheless, Bears get the win, 30-12. So good for them and their young rookie. So let's move on. I think this is the start of the afternoon games, but it is the Seattle Seahawks beating the Arizona Cardinals 20-10. Despite not having DK Metcalf in this game, didn't matter. Seattle figures it out, while Arizona, it seems like, although they started off the year hot, wheels starting to come off just a bit. But nonetheless, John, what were your thoughts? Did you have any thoughts on this game? Because this was a later game.
Yeah, so I got to watch like maybe the first 2 drives or some of this game, but by this point I was out, so yeah. I don't really know what actually happened in this one.
It wasn't. I mean,
I remember seeing at least early, like Kenneth Walker was having some success, but other than that, I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, it's typical kind of Seattle, where offense, was sputtering at times, but they made enough plays, especially as early in the game. We saw a little bit of Jackson Smith and Jigba have some. Obviously, got a touchdown. He had some production. But also, Jake Bobo seems to be a guy that maybe are featuring more. Maybe one of these guys that they found late, because he's been had a couple good weeks now. And then on the flip side, I mean, for Arizona, like we've mentioned, just I think lack of talent is starting to catch up to them. But I still think they're a really well-coached team. I mean, they hung around this game late. It was still, 10-17 going to the fourth quarter, 1-possession game. But I think we're starting to see their limitations, basically. So it'll be interesting to see, just for them, how they handled the Kyler Murray, coming back situation. Do they take their time, and just let him come back at his own pace? Or it'd be interesting to see. Because
apparently,
go ahead.
From what I've read,
okay,
they are very eager to see him play. Like I read a whole report on it this morning about how they want to see him play. And even so in his contract, there's like a thing that if he cannot pass a physical at some point during this summer, that all like his money would become guaranteed. Not all of it, but some of his, like, he'd get extra guaranteed. And even despite that, like, because, there's potential of, they'd move off of him and blah, blah, blah. Even despite that, they're like, apparently they are dead set on, we want to see him play this year. So
we'll see. But it'd be interesting. And I hear it too, because, I mean, you may want to see how he fits in the system in case you have to make the decision to draft a new quarterback, if you're in the position to do so, or, stick with him, especially because we are, I would already say this offense is at least more creative and better than it was under Cliff Kingsbury, but we'll see, obviously, once he is eventually under center. But, also one other thing, I forget, I think it was Seattle. Everyone's saying that tush push is, overpowered and such. We'll talk more about it later, but I think if I remember correctly, Seattle tried it, didn't work. So it's not, I think we'll talk more later, but it's starting to look like it's just more of a talent thing. It's not just, some broken play like in Madden.
Yeah.
But anyway, Seattle gets the crucial win. They go to they beat the Cardinals 20-10, move to 4-2. Cardinals 1-6, unfortunately, but that is not too much of a shocker in our eyes. But let's go to what is one of the shockers, but honestly shame on us, I guess, for not believing in or not being wary, or especially on you because you put 300 on this one. And it was the Steelers getting the win against the Rams, 24-17. Typical Steelers. Do you have any comments before I guess I break this one down?
Of course, man. Of course the Steelers do it. You know, of course it would be the freaking Pittsburgh Steelers that do this.
Yeah, I mean
that's
it.
I didn't watch the game, but of course.
Yeah, I mean, so in regards to this one, I wish I think the Rams really missed having Kyron Williams here because, I mean, Royce Freeman and Harrison actually had a pretty efficient days, and I think they probably should have been more patient with the run. But Steelers, they were kind of all over the Rams' passing attack. I know Puka Nacua had a good game, but even then, that was a lot of just Stafford, and Nacua just making the damnedest throw and catch. In regards to that, just making some great plays there. Even the Tutu Atwell touchdown, I think that was supposed to go to Cooper Kupp, and it was one of those it was supposed to go to Tutu. But anyways, they definitely, as I mentioned, Cooper Kupp, Steelers were able to take him away. Even one of the TJ Watt's his only interception, I don't know if you saw it, he dropped back into coverage, by the way, and like a safety too, one of the better All-Pro safeties, just. I guess he knew a tendency, or maybe it's something that they were coached. Once again, I would love to know, but he just jumped a route like a professional, like a freaking Pro Bowl defensive back. Just jumped the route on a Cooper Kupp pass and picked off Matthew Stafford. It was really just a great play and read. And yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh just finds a way. It's not pretty offensively. I mean, Pickett was a little more efficient. I think we saw that having Deontay Johnson does help a little bit, and having that guy that can. You can throw the 5-yard slant or out route, and he might be able to make a guy or two miss. And all of a sudden, 2nd and 5 becomes 2nd and 1. And okay, Pittsburgh, we can get that 1 yard. I think things like that helped having him back. And his offense, it's not pretty, but they find in crucial moments ways to move the ball. Because even at the end of the game, it's a tie ball game, and they manage to go on. All of a sudden, they managed to go on a 10-play, 80-yard drive to give them the lead. And granted, it was helped by a couple of penalties, but nonetheless, I mean, yeah. And George Pickens also looking better and better as season goes on too, as he was also making some great plays. But yeah, it's Steelers, man. Credit to Mike Tomlin and the gang, 4-2, and I mean technically behind Baltimore, but that's because Baltimore haven't had their bye week. So Baltimore 5-2, Pittsburgh 4-2, but yeah, good win for them, and for a tough loss for the Rams, especially at home. But we'll see, if they can bounce back. And like I said, I think it's just a bump in the road. Cooper Kupp, silenced, but it's just the Steelers, man. The Steelers are going to Steeler. I know it's not a great analysis, but kudos to Mike Tomlin and the crew for just figuring out ways to win these games where they were not the better team for majority of the game, and they still, at the end of the day, make a couple of plays more than the other team.
I mean, they're 4-2, and they've beaten some solid teams. They beat Cleveland, they beat Baltimore. They're I don't know, man. I don't know how he does it. Man.
Yeah, it's kudos to them. Kudos to them is all I got to say, because I don't know, but hats off to them. So yeah, they really put us behind the 8 ball in regards to our picks and bets. But let's go over to Kansas City, where the Chiefs took care of business against the Chargers, 31-17. This is one where I already have people already seeing, especially the Tua gang, saying, "Oh, well, now it's over, John. Tua's better than Herbert." But nonetheless, any thoughts before or comments in regards to this game and the Chiefs win?
I mean, it's the Chiefs, so I expected them to win. Also, I think it's about time that maybe we start putting some credit on the Chiefs defense. They've been absolutely fantastic on the year. And I'm not just talking about they've been good. I'm talking top 5 defense good. They've been kind of incredible, and I don't feel like they're necessarily getting the credit that they deserve on that. So I mean, it's only week 7, but Kansas City's defense has been a pretty massive reason as to why they have the record they have, because I've seen a lot of, Broncos fans sharing the picture. You can put Mahomes and Russell Wilson's stats side by side. And, obviously there's a lot of context missing here, but Russell Wilson has better stats, right? And so, and ultimately, there's that. Once again, context is missing, but Chiefs defense, the what I want to say is Chiefs defense has been balling out because it's not requiring a superhero Mahomes season for them to win games, which is good. Like you shouldn't need that. Like that's the ideal scenario for your quarterbacks. We don't want well, fantasy people want this, the fans want this, but like as a team, you don't want to have Mahomes go out there and throw 50, 60 times a game and have to be in shootouts all the time. Like you want to be able to sometimes hang your hat on defense. They're able to do that. Like I said, I didn't get to watch this game. I didn't watch highlights or anything either, so I don't even know, like, in terms of the interceptions and all that stuff of what's happening. But yeah, I don't know. The Chargers' offensive line, I think, is also it's bad. It's really bad right now. Like I think Herbert's the second most sacked quarterback in the NFL. I could be wrong on that, but I think I saw that somewhere. So it's starting to get pretty bad, and they can't move the ball like effectively on the ground, really. Like I know that Josh Kelly like had a big day, but like Austin Eckler back to back, like really rough games. And even Kelly, like I imagine
that was on that 49-yard run.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was about to ask, because I imagine that came on like a big play because it wasn't like they were featuring him a lot. Yeah, 49-yard run, he had 75 yards. So like over half of his carry or half of his yardage was on one play, and that includes the touchdown. So I don't know. It's the Chargers at this point. I mean, Brandon Staley probably should have already been gone, and I wasn't a big fan of the Kellen Moore hiring and all these kind of things. But if I'm the Chargers, I really don't know how I can stick it out another season with Brandon Staley, even the rest of this season, because they have far too much talent for them to be 2-4 right now. To be honest, I know they've played some tough teams. The Chiefs, the Cowboys, some of these teams, but they're far too talented to be 2-4.
No, I completely agree. And especially we talked about Chiefs offense that going into this week, we knew, okay, like it's not the same Chiefs offense as before. They're not clicking on all cylinders. And everyone knows as of right now, the bread and butter, it has been the past couple of years, especially this year with their lack of continuity and talent at wide receiver as of right now, it's going to be Travis Kelce. And Kelce still killed him. And this is Mahomes' best game of the year. So, and like you just said, there's a lot of talent on this Chargers defense too. So it's kind of inexcusable. And you're a defensive head coach, Brandon Staley, and this is a division rival. You should know them very well. And, we just talked about a couple of the other division games where they're kind of stinkers. New England was able to, so yeah, like in terms of that, that's why I'm with you. Like at this point, I try to defend Staley, try to be objective along with you, but yeah, I'm on the same boat. Like at this point, I think they have to. We'll see. I mean, I'm interested to see the candidates, but yeah, I would expect them to move on. Maybe get an offensive-minded head coach, because it feels like Anthony Lynn wasn't really that guy to start with, and then they grabbed the defensive head coach, which I understand at the time. Staley was the bright young defensive mind, but I don't want to be mean, but it feels like Staley's going to be one of those guys that. He's just better as a defensive coordinator as opposed to a head coach. And who knows, maybe he'll be better if he gets a different position elsewhere down the line. But yeah, like this defense has been lackluster. And on the other side of the ball, like also the offense, I know that it is a new offensive coordinator, new system or whatever. But yeah, like I think that's also where the front office kind of failed them in regards to like they haven't really gotten outside of Keenan Allen. I know they had Mike Williams, but no one else really scares you in terms of skill position guys. And they did grab Quentin Johnston, and we both liked him, but Quentin's, it seems like, still trying to find his way. He's still struggling, especially in regards to some of his other rookie counterparts to get production. But yeah, regardless, I mean, and they got work they got to do on both sides of the ball. And I really hate that there's also another stat that I've seen being thrown around. Herbert has like the most losses, out of any quarterback since he basically came in the league. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, the Chargers have kind of been a mess. That first year with Anthony Lynn, like literally their offense was run, pass on third down. So that was, and Herbert still produced then. But then, yeah, the past few years have been rough. Once again, I know Herbert has been perfect. He missed Keenan Allen a couple times, missed him, on a touchdown pass this week. Although I don't think it was really all on Herbert. I know you didn't watch. It was like they were kind of like 5-10 yards away from the touchdown. It looked like it was, in my opinion, I think it was the play was a screen pass call. It seemed very much so, but it looked like both Chief defenders bit on the screen. So Keenan Allen kind of just slipped his block and just went kind of. It looked like it was an improv kind of. Keenan Allen just slipped and ran straight to the touchdown. And I think, as you know, sometimes when the play's called for a screen, but he saw it. Herbert tried to throw it, he missed him. And it was quote unquote missed him wide open. But I just think that it kind of caught Herbert by surprise that the Chiefs did that, and he tried to adjust. And when your footwork's off, his footwork was meant to throw the screen as opposed to throw the go route. Basically, I don't know, but nonetheless, yeah, the Chargers, they got some work to do, and I side on that Mahomes Russell Wilson graphic that you mentioned because our friend Mitch sent it to me too, and I was like, "What, Mitch? What are you doing?" Sent it to me as well. I was like, "What are you doing here? Like, we all know Mahomes is awesome. Like, come on." Because that little graphic, I don't think it includes yards or rushing yards. Because by the way, Mahomes has been really good in regards to extending plays, and we'll talk about Denver probably in a minute here. But that's something that Russell Wilson, since he's came to Denver, we haven't seen his capability. Sorry, so I don't want to get on a rant down that line, but and also Chiefs receivers though, I will say, found a little more chemistry here. Granted, like we said, Chargers defense has been very disappointing, so maybe not too much of a shock that Marquez Valdes-Scantling had his game where he had a deep bomb, and the Rashee Rice, of all the receivers, he seems to be the one trending in the right direction. He's been the most consistent in recent weeks in regards to just being a factor. So obviously Chiefs handled their business, continue to dominate the AFC West. Chargers is looking more and more, like we said, that the seat is getting hotter and hotter by the minute for Brandon Staley, and it just seems like divorce is inevitable for the two. So we'll see if/when that happens. But let's go on to my Green Bay Packers, the last game of the afternoon slate, and oddly the only other game I got right, and it's because I didn't pick the Packers as they lose to the Denver Broncos, 19-17. An opportunity late to win this one. Did you see any of this one? I wouldn't be shocked if we saw zero this game. Okay,
literally,
it's okay because I unfortunately watched this whole thing. It's the same story. I mean, in regards to the Packers, where just outside of a couple of really good throws and plays, I mean, even one of the touchdown to a late touchdown to take the lead to go up 17-16. It was so they're at about 2-3 yards from the goal line, if I remember. It was a fourth down, John. Romeo Doubs runs a kind of a slant, and he's like kind of in the slot, and then I think Jaden Reed's on the outside. Doubs runs a slant. Love throws it kind of behind him, goes off his hands, but just so happens it lands right in the hands of a Jaden Reed. So kind of a lucky touchdown there, if I'm going to be honest. So score is a little bit deceiving. But yeah, it really was just Packers offense. I know Love had a good completion percentage wise, but they stalled out a lot on offense. A couple of missed opportunities, especially to Christian Watson. There's a time where he vastly underthrew Watson. It was an interception. I think that was called back on a penalty, but nonetheless, just lack of continuity. I mean, the leading receiver yardage rights was AJ Dillon, so I think that says a lot in regards to how the Packers struggled. Aaron Jones. I know he's supposed to be the spark. He's supposed to bring a spark back to the offense. Didn't really seem that way. But hey, his first week back fully in that role. And then, Denver, they did enough to win. Like I said, this is kind of, you talk about ugly games. This one was kind of just an ugly-ish game. We'll say, too, Denver was able to run the ball, seeming like at will. Javonte Williams could have had an even better day than the stats show. There's a couple times where he got shoestringed or, just could almost broke the tackle to break it open, but tripped up and got downed. So it could have been even worse than it was. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how my Packers do going the rest of the year, but it's not looking great. That's what I'll say. Yeah. But I'm not going to ring the alarm bell yet and give up on Jordan Love, and I doubt that Green Bay will too. I will say this: unless Jordan Love absolutely shits the bed for the whole rest of the season, I honestly think that he'll be fine. Obviously, you want him to go through some growing pains. So, and I will say it hasn't helped that the offensive line. I know I don't want to bring injuries. I'm not saying excuse the loss. I'm just saying in regards to evaluating Jordan Love, it's still not really fair because obviously missing Bakhtiari hurts, and this offensive line obviously is just not been the same as it was last year. And obviously losing a big piece in Bakhtiari doesn't help in that. So, it's typical Packers, it seems like, for this whole year. But Yeah. And anything else before we move on? Like I said, you didn't watch this game, so
No, I didn't watch this one. I
Like-
mean, I'd like to see more Javante. I know he got 18 touches, but I feel like he's having some good games the last handful of weeks where we're seeing the efficiency is really good. Like it's 5 yards a carry. And so, Sean, I think, maybe it's time to really lean in on the guy. Him and Jaleel McLaughlin is like the change of pace.
yeah, I will say I like that. That's quietly becoming a really fun duo because McLaughlin's definitely the more speedster and provides the same. So we'll see if they can keep using those two to help kickstart this offense. As Russell Wilson been solid, like we mentioned. So not Mahomes level, like some people want to throw out, but he's been good enough. Definitely better than last year, I will say. So, all right, let's go to the Sunday night game, and this one was handled by the Eagles. It was supposed to be a little bit more of a closer game. I know the score shows 14 points, but Eagles pretty much dominated this one, 31-17 over the Dolphins. Did you get a chance to watch this game?
I watched but it was over by the time I watched essentially because the wedding went late, so I didn't get home till it was also like an hour and a half drive away, so by the time I got home it was basically over.
You're good. So yeah, in regards to this one, I mean, let me start with the Eagles offense. I will give them credit that they, especially at the beginning of the game, they seems like they have a couple game plan specific creative plays, like a screen to Dallas Goedert. I think most of Goddard's production was off like the first quarter. So obviously there's emphasis to get him going a bit. And obviously he caught a really creative screen for, I think that was a touchdown there. But other than that, it was just the Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown show. And I will say I was a little bit surprised that Philadelphia was able to run pretty solidly, especially with Swift against the Dolphins. Not overly, but yeah, A.J. Brown, pretty awesome. And, my boy Sims has already, put out a tweet saying, hey, AJ Brown's a top 3 wide receiver. And I would definitely say he's in that conversation. He's definitely shown that the past, at least year, especially the stretch he's been on the past few games, he's been amazing. And on the opposite side, Dolphins offense, we saw that. I will give them credit early on. They tried to run, did not work out. They tried to be patient with the run, it didn't work out. And I know they lost Waddle, and I know they lost a couple of linemen. I'm already hearing, Dolphins fans or Tua apologists, the refs, come on. Like, especially as John would know as a Dallas fan, come on. Don't complain about the refs. There was, other than, it's not like the refs decided a couple of plays. Like, they got their butts kicked here because although Dolphins scored 17 points, 7 of those were a pick six off a deflection that went right into the linebacker's hands for the Dolphins. I think it was Jerome Baker. Yeah, it was Jerome Baker. Literally, it was a deflected pass right into his hands, like a 20-yard pick six. That was easy. Other than that, Dolphins. And then I think 3 points, too, was off a Jalen Hurts fumble, which was also in plus territory where they didn't have to go much. Credit the Eagles defense, especially their secondary, because they were able to really contain Tyreek Hill and Waddle. For the most part, I know Tyreek still had, there's still a play where Tyreek beat the defense, but for the most part, definitely held them in check, especially for Yak. We mentioned, and I'm sure as you know, a lot of the bread and butter Miami too is getting them these 5-7 yard passes or even the screen plays, where they get the ball and as Tyreek dances or shuffles around and still somehow gets 10 more yards because he just, shakes the defender. Did a really good job, Eagles rallying. And then also just getting pressure on Tua. And then we saw this game too, where, Tua had to pat the ball a little bit. It seemed like the Eagles had a good feel for taking away some of his first and second read. And all of a sudden now Tua's got to pat the ball. And, and it was tough sledding there. So, I'm not going to say the Dolphins are frauds or whatever, because, it is one game and it's, opposing conferences. But, definitely interested to see going forward. Like we mentioned at the top of the podcast, last year they started off really well, but when the season gets on, when the weather gets colder, and and it is a factor, the weather and playing outdoors, because if you're a speed team, speed kind of gets taken away. While as opposed to the Eagles, they're have really good size on both ends of the ball. Size not really affected by the weather. If anything, that helps when you have better size on both your lines. So obviously, we'll see if the Dolphins can get healthy down the stretch, but it was Eagles pretty much winning this one and in control for most of the game. Anything else you wanted to add?
I mean, I like I said for the Lions, I think this is a wake up call. I know, well, maybe not as much because like I feel like Miami's wake up call was against Buffalo, and Buffalo just absolutely like smacked them around and kind of did whatever they want. But this is another one, one's like a measuring stick game. Two of the teams that historically over the last handful of years have been making some playoff runs, Buffalo and Philly. They both kind of just had their way with you. They were able to kind of take away what you wanted to do offensively, hold you to a lower point total than the crazy amount of numbers that they've been putting up against some of these bad defenses, and defensively too, they kind of broke down. Like I think Buffalo had like 40 points. Like it was a high score. It was 48, I think it was. I don't know, it was something crazy. And then here Philly gets 31. So yeah, I mean, like I said, measuring stick game, even though, like I said, I didn't really get to watch it. It just, this kind of shows you where Miami stacks up. They still got a ways to go. They still got to figure some things out. I know they don't have Jalen Ramsey. You already mentioned the offensive injuries and all these kind of things throughout the season so far, but measuring stick.
Yeah, and to be fair, they didn't have Xavier Howard, but nonetheless,
Yeah.
like still as a whole, like it was troubling. And I do want to say, because it will apply to this next game too, the Monday Nighter, but once again, like we've mentioned, we know Tua is really good, and I will say he's a little bit better than I initially projected him to be. But like I've said, when all the McDaniels tricks are gone, when it's just pure drop back, can you dissect it? Can you just make the perfect throws and such, or improvise on your own? Seeming like those were our concerns about Tua, and I know it's the Eagles. They're probably the top 3, top 5 roster / team, so it's a little bit of a anomaly in regards to the teams you're going to go up against. But once again, you get in the playoffs, you're going to have to play a lot of teams of this caliber that are going to focus on taking away, bracketing Tyreek Hill, doubling him like the Eagles did, and then and being physical and such. So it's just, like you said, a very important litmus game / reality check for the Dolphins for their future success.
And I do just want to say too, like, I don't want to call the Dolphins overrated, but when you look at their schedule so far, I mean, the games where they put up major points, they played the Chargers defense, the Broncos defense, the Panthers defense, and the Giants defense. And the Giants one, I mean, as we've seen, the Giants are actually, they're kind of turning it on. So that I would say that's an impressive one. But even then, Tua threw 2 picks in that game. And the offense could not move the ball at all. They ran, like Eric Gray was the Giants' leading rusher. He had 12 carries for 25 yards. Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of an easy game. But like I said, I mean, you look at the other games there. The Chargers, one of the worst defenses in the league. The Broncos, arguably the worst defense in the league, one of the worst. And the Panthers, one of the worst. So it's like you're putting up major numbers against some teams that aren't great defensively. And I only bring this up because this is kind of a theme of me for the last 2 weeks, is if you're going to criticize the Cowboys and Dak for certain things, just quite frankly, the only 2 teams that the Dolphins have played this year that have winning records, they have lost, and they have lost convincingly.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was the Bills 48-20, and now the Eagles 31-17. All the other games they've played, Chargers, Patriots, Broncos, Giants, Dolphins, or Panthers, all of these teams at most have 2 wins through 7 games.
Yeah. Or
the Chargers. The Chargers, I think, have 3.
But regardless, like you're mentioning,
no, they're 2-4.
Yeah.
They're 2-4. So, like, literally, I mean, but like the best team that they have beaten theoretically would be the Chargers, who are 2-4.
Yeah, and that was a close game. That was a very close game, went down the wire.
Yeah, they won by 2. So I don't know. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying they're frauds like the Vikings were. I'm not saying that they're overrated yet. But if we go throughout the rest of this schedule, they're going to play the Patriots again. They already beat them, and they should beat them because the Patriots have been kind of miserable. They're going to play, some other bad teams like the Raiders, the Commanders. But if we go throughout this schedule, and notably they play the Chiefs, the Cowboys, the Ravens, and the Bills again. If those 4 games, if they were to lose all 4 of those games, then I want to hear all the people who are sitting here talking about Tua and this offense. I want to hear you criticize him just as much as you criticize Dak, because I've heard my entire life Dak doesn't beat winning teams. even though last year he was 5-1 against them. But to start his career, it was Dak doesn't beat winning teams, because he would go like 2-6 against them his sophomore year. I'm just pulling that number out. I don't know exactly what it was, but I do know the first 4 years of his career, it was a struggle. Like, he had a losing record against winning teams. And like I said, so far, they're 0-2 against winning teams. They're beating up on bad teams. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, one-sided teams, too. Teams that, like you said, maybe,
Yeah.
like I said, Giants, have a solid defense, but like you mentioned,
But terrible
terrible offense. So not a good balanced team. So yeah,
Yeah.
The Chiefs too in Germany. So we know about that. And the only thing I want to add to is Jets. Jets could also be a team that could give them trouble too.
yeah,
Because we know how good and fast that defense is too. And as long as the offense does their thing, the Jets could also be an interesting.
And they play them late. It's late November, middle of December when they play him those two times. And I don't expect Aaron Rodgers to be back, but the guy seems to believe he's playing this season. I don't think he will. I think he's just talking to talk. But the only reason I say that is the later the season goes, the more that a defense like the Jets in the cold weather, all those kind of things, that's where they thrive. And we saw this last year. The later the season goes too for Miami, the offense started to struggle towards the end of the year. People started to adjust. They figured out some of the stuff McDaniels was doing. Maybe they could just kind of find ways to beat you. Everybody gets banged up. You're dealing with injuries. You don't have everybody available. Can they still compete? I don't know.
Yeah, and sorry, last point. I know I mentioned the weather, but like weather is a real thing late in the season because you playing in the snow, you're playing these subpar conditions. It takes away your speed, and that's what the Dolphins, especially on offense, are relying upon: timing and speed. But when they factor in the elements, that can be a concern. So obviously,
and might I add too, actually, this is unrelated to the Dolphins, but everybody talks about Jared Goff and the weather. They're playing outside, and it wasn't ideal conditions when they were playing Baltimore. I think there was like a little bit of rain that happened or something, and Jared Goff struggled. So it's a real thing. It is a real thing.
Yeah, that's why we say arm power, throwing pass. So that's one of our criticisms with Tua. Can he, in those inclement weather games, you mentioned the Green Bay game last year. Sorry. But those are real factors. Throwing through the wind, throwing through the elements, having a powerful arm, but on good enough, tight enough spiral too. Along with that, just all those things factor into your success late in the year. So we'll see. Obviously, more of these two teams going forward. But let's get to the Monday night, last but not least, and it was another shocking upset as the Vikings primetime Kirk showed up, apparently the good one, I guess. But as the Vikings win 22-17 over the 49ers, I'm guessing you were able to watch this game as well because you were commenting. Okay, so I'll throw it to you. What are your thoughts here?
Man, the Vikings surprised me. I'm not gonna lie, they shocked me. I did not see this coming out of the Minnesota Vikings. So good on them, because we obviously know that they were talking about the whole Kirk Cousins situation. He didn't want to get traded and all this stuff. And, obviously in the locker room, things are a little bit different than maybe the GM's office. The GM might want to, but maybe the players, they like Kirk. The coaches are down. Like, obviously, I don't think like NFL players want to tank. Like maybe a couple do, like, because they're like, I want a better quarterback next year. We can get, this guy. But for the most part, like, they're competitors. They want to win games. So like when you see these terrible teams, don't think that like all the players are just like giving up and stuff. Like I think a lot of them do want to win for their own pride, and that we see that with the Vikings. They come out here, they get a win. They're now sitting in 3-4, and it feels like a season that was looking like it might have been lost. It's not quite saved, but there's hope. There's a chance if they can kind of keep it together while Justin Jefferson's out. Maybe he comes back, you get a boost. Maybe you kind of figure things out as you go. Who knows? Maybe the Vikings can bring it back. But yeah, I would say, honestly, out of I don't know, the last couple of years, this is probably the most impressive game I've seen out of the Minnesota Vikings. They did it on the thing that really impressed me too is they did it on both sides of the ball. Not only were they able to have success offensively, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but like defensively too. They looked really good defensively, and they were able to stifle what San Francisco wanted to do. They forced that fumble on McCaffrey. They intercept Purdy 2 times, almost 3 times. Or well, not a third interception, but he almost fumbled on that one play where he was getting sacked and he threw it forward. And that very well could have been another turnover. So like the Vikings were kind of all over the place defensively. And before I hear anybody talk, oh, they didn't have Debo. Like, come on. Once again, you got McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and that offensive line, and you're going to give me that BS against this Minnesota Vikings defense that has looked like Swiss cheese throughout the year. Like, I'm not hearing that. This was an embarrassing game, I would say, on both sides for the Niners. I wouldn't say defensively it was the worst. There were some kind of freak plays, but like the big one that really stood out to me was that Jordan Addison long touchdown
at the end of the half.
It was an interception essentially, but Jordan Addison rips it out of Ward's hands and takes it. Number one, on Ward, maybe knock that down. I don't know. Like there's no real. I can't remember where exactly it was on the field, but I don't think if he catches that and intercepts it and goes down there, there's much chance of them getting a field goal. So maybe I'm wrong on that, but like. Play it safe there, but also what are we doing on the defensive play calling? Like I haven't really been like that much paying attention to the defensive play calling for the Niners because over the year they've been really solid. But that specific play, you blitzed right before the half with how far back they are, no safety help. You leave your corners on islands. I understand the logic is that you probably want to, I don't know, like prevent him from having time to throw. But just quite frankly, like, I don't know, I'd play it safe, like, and just put your guys back, don't blitz, make them drive the ball down the field, because considering how much time was left and everything that happened, that's just kind of inexcusable as a play caller, because I don't know, it seems like when I was watching the game, the one thing that I would say was very impressive in regards to Kirk Cousins in the offense was he was sitting in that pocket and he was stepping up when he needed to, and I felt like he handled the pressure well. I don't think did he get sacked in this game?
He did not.
Yeah, he didn't even get sacked once. So good on the Vikings offensive line. Good on Kirk to get the ball out on schedule. I mean, they're doing this without Justin Jefferson. I don't know. Like I said, the Vikings have kind of had a weird year, but I thought this was just a really, really impressive win. And also, I texted you, Jordan Addison, that guy might be the real deal, which is kind of scary if you have him and Justin Jefferson. I'm not saying he's Jefferson level, but he's been balling this year.
Yeah, him and then Hawkinson also had a really good game too. I would want to add, and
which killed me in fantasy 2 leagues.
Yeah, I think some credit goes to the O'Connell. I almost said the wrong one because I think, like you said, losing Justin Jefferson, but then finding ways to have get Jordan Addison and have success. Obviously, that 160-yard touchdown was a little bit fluky, but he still had a really good game, even if you take that out of the equation. And even though it was fluky, the fight to take the ball was, it's impressive. Yeah, and like even then, I know, I'm not going to go as far as say it was embarrassing because, man, you take that one kind of fluky touchdown away, the Niners probably win this game. That's literally a one possession game. But as we saw in the fourth quarter, and I think credit to Brian Flores, and I think a little bit more credit needs to be given to the Vikings defense because they haven't been great, but man, what have they been working with? And the past 2 weeks, they've been pretty solid. I mean, I know it's the Panthers, but they held them to 13 points. Chiefs, I mean, it was tough, but 27 there. And then, Bears, for the talent they have, they've done what the most they can, especially this week, though, was very impressive. Taking away the run game. And we've been kind of not really wanting, but been interested to see, okay, now Brock Purdy, can you drop back? And like you said with Tua, can you drop back? Game's on your shoulders now. There's no play action plays that are going to help, create one-on-ones or, get guys open. It's just pure drop back. They know you're throwing. Can you deliver? And we saw, especially with both interceptions, it's not like it was miscommunication. It just was a poor throw on both of them, to be honest. And that was a concern of ours about Purdy is, hey, he doesn't have the greatest arm. He's a solid thrower, but not the greatest arm. And we saw both of those poor timing too in regards to that. I think one of them literally right to the safety. I don't even know what the thought process was. Like I said, that's where, and I'm trying to think the one later I'm kind of blanking on, but even then I don't remember it being because usually I try to side with the quarterback. I try to be, okay, was it maybe a miscommunication or with a wide receiver? But no, both of them were pretty much straight to the defender. And like
The second one, I could be misremembering, but from what I remember, he kind of, I think the pressure kind of pushed him a little bit to the right, and he turned back. It wasn't like like the Mac Jones one like against Dallas where he like completely went like crossbody, but he kind of went back to the left and just tried to force it. And like I felt like it was really, it just showed the arm strength there because he tried to throw it in a relatively tight window that he doesn't have the arm for. Like he wasn't going to make that throw. And it was a bad decision, honestly, just because you got to know that like you're not that guy. Like you're not Patrick Mahomes who can make that throw.
yes.
And I don't say that even disparagingly about Brock Purdy, but it's like we talked. I've said this about Joe Burrow before. There are certain throws that Rodgers, like Mahomes, Josh Allen, Herbert, like the guys who have those cannons, they can make that throw. Joe Burrow's a top 4 quarterback in the league. He can't make that throw because he doesn't have the arm strength they do. And that's just how it goes sometimes. Like physically, maybe you're not as gifted.
But I will say, in defense of Burrow, I feel like Burrow would have just thrown the ball away or checked it down, as opposed to
Yeah,
at least he knows his limitations. Right?
Yeah.
And he's always aware of the moment. Well, Purdy, I think we saw on at least Monday night, it didn't seem to be that case. And hey, once again, I think I'm not sitting here saying he's trash. I don't think either of us are saying that. We're just calming down the hype on him and just trying to be realistic in regards to, hey, he's really good, or he's good. Good enough, definitely good enough to execute the offense. And hey, every now and then make a play off schedule for the offense. But he's not, like you said, of the caliber of those elite guys where they constantly make plays on their own, or they can do things, like you said, that 99% of the other quarterbacks in the league just can't. So so it's a day, like I said, maybe a little bit of wake up call for Purdy in the gang, and despite injuries and such. But once again, everyone's dealing with injuries, so that's not really a great excuse, especially at this point in the season and how the season's going. So great win for the Vikings. Go ahead.
I want to add too that for all the people who were crying that he was the MVP and that this guy's elite and all this kind of stuff, because the way that he started the season, which for the record, like I don't know, I don't want to sound like a Brock Purdy hater here, but I did think the way that he's like, I felt that the start of the season for him was a little bit overrated because of the Cowboys game. Like the rest of his stats on the season weren't like that great. Like it wasn't like he was lighting up these other teams. Like the Cowboys game, he threw 4 touchdowns. Before that, he had 5 total in like the previous 4 games, which is like good, but it's not like he was like out there doing like what Mahomes did when he was, in his rookie year or his first year starting, where he was like throwing 5-4 a game, and everybody's freaking out about that. And then the Cowboys game happens, and obviously, he had a solid performance. I'm not taking anything away from him. He absolutely diced us up. But because of that, all of a sudden everybody started putting him on this pedestal, when in reality it was 1 game. And then he comes, and then we play Cleveland, and everybody's like, oh, it's a defense. Man, Gardner Minshew was able to have success against that defense with the Colts. So like, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Brock Purdy, but that was a terrible game. And then against the Vikings defense, who has been very bad on the year, we had 2 bad turnovers, and everybody talked, oh, clutch this, clutch that, with all these QBs. The guy drove down the field, and he had multiple opportunities at the end of that game to take the lead, and they didn't do it. And that was with McCaffrey, Ayuk, George Kittle, that line. Your defense played, I wouldn't say amazing, but like they held him to 22 points. That's a winnable game, and you weren't able to do it. And I'm only saying this because there's other quarterbacks that we're talking about right now, like Josh Allen, like Justin Herbert, like Dak Prescott, that if they were in that same situation, I'm not saying they're guaranteed to win, but their defense allowed more points than the Vikings scored. They didn't have the weapons necessarily that Brock Purdy has. They don't have the play caller of Kyle Shanahan. They don't have all these things, and we're blaming them, and yet for some reason Brock Purdy is blameless. That's all I'm saying. Like, keep the same energy. Keep the same energy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, like I said, I'm with you. Really hate because also, I'm sorry, last point, it's not really in regards to this game, but yeah, like I'm already seeing like the Josh Allen haters come out like, oh, all he did was almost beat Mahomes in divisional game, and everyone and I'll use crown like this, like, no, like Josh Allen's pretty damn good. Have you seen
Are they forgetting the year before when they went to the conference championship? Like
that's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. Runs. They're saying that there's just that run that everyone's basing off. Like, no, like he's had amazing years.
I'm saying the one that you're talking about, that was the divisional overtime loss the year after. So, because that was the year the Bengals went to the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah, I forget. But yeah, so yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So like he's had multiple runs. Like because I've seen that exact same thing that you saw too. Because I will say that overtime loss to the Chiefs was one of the greatest quarterback performances I've ever seen out of a player. Yeah. Like Josh Allen was absolutely, both him and Mahomes were just absolutely going crazy. But I've seen that comment and it frustrates me because people are saying that was all he had. The year before they went to the AFC Championship. That was the picture of Stephon Diggs watching the Chiefs celebrate. Like they've had multiple runs. Let's not act like he only had that one performance against the Chiefs and that was it, you know?
Yeah, that game didn't get the ball at the overtime. The Chiefs won, and then just bring and I should have said this when we mentioned the Patriots game. But once again, Patriots game, he put them ahead, and then their defense let the Patriots drive down the field. Not only a chance to score the game-winning field goal or game-tying field goal, but to punch it in with Mike freaking Gesicki doing the ugliest gritty on them too.
If he had thrown an interception on that drive that they scored when they had a chance to take the lead, people would be absolutely eviscerating him for it. They already are blaming him, but they'd be eviscerating him for it.
Yeah, because I guess he should have just gone out there and guarded Mike Gesicki himself. That's the only way he could have solved this. But anyways, that'll do it for us for now. As we try, hopefully we've educated some, at least even if it's just one person, educated the public. Listen, like context matters. Let's not overreact to certain things. Like have a broad scope.
Claiming people are MVPs after 5 games.
Yes, like it's still, like we said all along, it's so early in the season. Let's not react game by game. Let's look at the body of work. And yes, like it's the NFL too. I think that's what the last point I want to make. It's the NFL, people, I think too. So we see these upsets. Yes, they're upsets, but it's not like college where, oh my God, Georgia lost. I don't know that they did, but like Georgia lost to Middle Tennessee State. Like and like it's not. There's not that disparity of talent level. Like it's the NFL. They're all professionals, and I know. Yeah. Obviously, there's going to be teams that have more talent at the end of the day, but like we said, you have limited possessions in the NFL, and it's welcome to the pros.
The reason they say any given Sunday.
And yeah, that's why I title. I mean, I'm going to have to title this one the Any Given Sunday Part 2 because I titled last week Any Given Sunday, and this week was wild as well. But that's just the NFL for you. That's why it's so hard to have a perfect season or an imperfect season. Those are very rare. So,
and I want to reiterate too, because I feel a little bad about the way that I kind of shredded the Lions earlier. We've seen some of the best teams in previous seasons get absolutely dumpstered on. Like I remember that one time the Chiefs played like the Buccaneers and they just got absolutely demolished. Or no, it was the other way around. The Buccaneers got shredded by Kansas City
in the regular season,
and then they beat them in the Super Bowl.
And it was so it's like
so we've seen some of the best teams in the world get destroyed. So although we're talking about all these teams, once again, we're not sitting here declaring that all the Dolphins and the Lions they're gonna miss the playoffs. Oh my gosh, Tua and Jared Goff are the worst quarterbacks in the world. They're gonna get benched. Like, calm down. I literally saw a post today about if Brock Purdy plays bad against the Bengals next week,